the back, the VOD and the silver screen. Kevin and Tom and Joe know all there is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 815, Saturday Night Live.
I mean,
I always get the titles wrong on purpose. I don't know if Orlando's knows
Sure it
that.
wasn't Sunday Night Live?
Yeah.
That's what I thought it was.
Well, I mean, really, the bulk of the show does technically air on Sundays.
that's good.
Yes.
Well, I guess not anymore.
Well, yeah.
10:30. It's
Well,
it's
it's 10:30
our
Central.
Time. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
But
there,
right,
it's
right,
11:30.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That makes sense.
So, well, before we dig in, let's go around the table and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Joe.
And this is Tom, and joining us is
Orlandez. Glad to
Hey.
be back.
glad to have you back.
It's
So,
always fun.
well, we'll fix that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. It's challenge accepted. So before we dig in, some shameless plugs. Don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeart, TuneIn, wherever you find a podcast, you can find us, except for Google, because they don't do it anymore.
Correct.
So I shouldn't have said it.
They learned their lesson.
So, but you can't find a podcast there. So technically, what I
you
said
could,
is
well, I
still
guess you
true.
could Google real spoilers.
I guess.
You know?
Yeah.
You can utilize them for something.
Yeah, right.
So our SEO game is so weak. I bet you we don't show up even if you Google the name of the show.
Yeah, right.
It'll just take you to totally different.
Jeez, what
I'll
did
take
you
it.
do?
Yeah.
Such a banning.
We went all in on Ask Jeeves.
We
and-
did.
And Steven Google is still mad at us.
He's
so.
big mad.
So anyway, you while you're there, be sure and follow us so you never miss an episode. Maybe leave us a review. That is super helpful and greatly appreciated. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/realspoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. It's called the League of Show Sharers because we are hoping you will share an episode. People who were kind enough to share an episode last week include librarian Cynthia, Chris Valls, Phil Timon, Tom Dowdy, Travis Tewitt, Michael Tonkovic, Ralph Tribble, Julianne Jordan, Chris Magic Man, Richard Krotzer, Gabriel Lugo, Aaron Kyleman, Brent Smith, Ken Holtzhauser, Edit Photo Gamer, Nostalgia Cast, Cinema Recall, Spoiler Piece Theater, The Real Pete, Chris Wilson, EFC, Colby Mack, Geek to Me Radio, Dissect That Film, Binge Movies, Mike and Oscar, In Session Film, Ronnie Castle, Ryan Terry, and Matt Niglia. So thank you very much. We greatly appreciate all of your support. We also have a Patreon at patreon.com/realspoilers, where for $5 a month you get all sorts of bonus content, and we like you extra. Coming up, we have SNL movies.
That's right.
So
Blues Brothers is in the can and done.
Yeah.
With a special guest of his own Patreon, is Tom O'Keefe.
me.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just gonna
Never heard of him.
Yeah. You are missing nothing.
Yeah, so we're just gonna try to knock out all of the SNL. I think the last one is probably MacGruber, right? Is that they haven't done one since. They haven't really had a character that.
Yeah, not character, but obviously cast members are always
That
in
doesn't.
things,
That's
but
too much.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, and also it's just kind of a fool's game at
Right,
this point. Like,
right.
it's impossible.
Like,
to
oh,
achieve.
this person was on episode 57,
Right.
of
As a
season-
host.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, so those will all be you and Matt will be churning through those.
We
Maybe
will,
I'll show
yeah.
up for others because
I
love
mean,
that
you love MacGruber. I know that.
love MacGruber.
I know you do.
I love MacGruber so much.
Did they have a sequel to MacGruber? Or was
They-
it just
I
I think
TV
it was
show.
a TV show.
Oh, wow.
They did
yeah.
a TV show on Peacock,
Oh, I think I do remember
Yeah.
this now.
which I have
Wow.
not seen yet.
Neither have I.
I got Peacock, and then I always forget to watch it. And also, I don't think my wife cares for it, so then I have to find
Oh.
the time to watch it when she's not around.
The best part is with the WWE leaving Peacock, I can get rid of it. Which is they're going to Netflix, which I had anyway. So great.
Light in the pocket.
Yeah,
a
that's
little
right.
bit.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So, and we're on the YouTube, youtube.com/@realspoilers, where you can watch all of these. So,
Yes.
And why wouldn't you
Joker's doing real well.
want to stare at us while we talk about these things? So anyway, I guess there's all that. Let's dig in to Saturday night.
This is the kind of biopic that I can get behind. I love, like, I've realized, for the longest time, I don't think they used to do this, where it was just like a snapshot in time.
Yeah, like a little snippet.
Just a snippet.
Yeah.
You'd
Right.
always get like like the Freddie Mercury one is just like the expanse of his life, right?
Mhm.
This is perfect.
I think and Kevin and I talk about this all the time. Like the traditional biopic, while there are some good ones, they're very difficult to pull off.
Yeah.
because they always fall into what I call and then itis. And that there's no
You have to wrap it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's like no real narrative structure.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and then, Ray Charles met the Queen. And then Ray Charles
you have-
recorded this song you like.
You have points you need to hit.
right.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it just becomes a collection of anecdotes.
And then for the completists, it's just like, I know for myself, as far as being nitpicky, it's just like, well, they didn't talk
Right.
about this and they didn't get
Sure.
into that.
100%.
And when you're dealing with a monster like Saturday Night Live,
Right.
it's
impossible.
Even the first year alone, that's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I'll also say this is a fascinating. I love this movie.
I love it as well.
I thought this
It
movie
was
was great.
great.
And but it's fascinating in that it's not true, but it's accurate.
Yes.
You mean like things
Or
are,
it's
things are
maybe I should rather
embellished?
say it's not accurate, but it's true.
I felt like there were a lot of things that were put in that were kind of like SNL nuances that did not immediately have. Like there's some.
Yes.
I've been watching SNL like my entire life. I'm
Absolutely.
34.
Yeah.
But also just like the back history and everything. And there's some kind of things that were thrown in. And I'm just like, that was more season 3.
Right.
But you know.
And there's
I'm with you.
And there's some certainly some anecdotes of like, well, that didn't occur in the 90 minutes prior to the show. Like they're
Yes.
they're time shifting some anecdotes. There's some parts that I think are just completely made up out of whole
Oh,
cloth.
yeah.
But they also like when we get to it the Milton Berle stuff.
Oh,
yes.
like that none of that happened.
Yeah.
But
It's such a wild if that didn't happen
Yeah.
or was at least rumored to have happened. That is a wild thing to put into the movie.
so but like things like that happened. And
Sure.
it also kind of it was a way to illustrate what this show was for its moment in time, right?
Yeah.
So like while it's not accurate in the sense that did that specific thing occur? No. But it's used in a way to show you this is what SNL was and this is what it was replacing, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
aren't really going to fully get what TV comedy looked like at that point in time.
Yeah.
And that so it because SNL ends up that mentality ends up kind of taking over comedy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so it's really
Well, I think
easy
you
to
can even-
forget
you
what
even look at the creative staff, right?
Yeah.
Like those that first season is, I mean, it's heavyweights, and
Yeah.
even the Billy Crystal thing, where it's like Billy Crystal was if you're telling me that Billy Crystal was backstage and ready to go on the first episode,
Yeah.
that guy goes on to be an Academy. Wait, did he win an Oscar?
I don't think
Maybe
he
not.
won an Oscar, but
Maybe
But I mean, like he
was
becomes
nominated.
a megastar.
Yeah.
but he's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, even in kind of going a few years later into the mess, but I think it was like season 6 or something like that. Like Larry David was one of the writers
Sure.
for SNL.
Yeah.
It's just
Conan
like,
O'Brien.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just been a murderer's row of talent, and consistently over time.
And even
so.
and we we talk about the talent behind in front of the camera, and sometimes, but we don't talk about the guys who were running the show.
Yeah.
Right, like the
Yeah.
lighting guys or the directors, and
Yeah.
all of these different people that were involved.
And a lot of those key staff members, like they ended up there for the remainder of their career.
Right.
Yeah.
They just never left, and so and that's pretty rare. I mean, if a show runs 10 years in television, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But when you have people that have literally been there since, I mean, Don Pardo.
I was going to say Don Pardo.
Don
like,
Pardo was
great.
announcing that show until 4 years ago
now
when he died.
Daryl Hammond, right?
And now it's Daryl Hammond because
Yeah.
they actually had a conversation about because so there were a few times when Don Pardo couldn't make it. He was either sick or something was happening. I know that happened once in the 80s, and I believe Joe Piscopo did it, but
Wow.
he did it impersonating Don Pardo.
Ah.
And then I think Daryl Hammond did it once that way too. And so they had because for years he had always done it live, and then he got really he was like 96 or
Yeah,
something.
he
He was very old. And then they had him finally he would just record it and they would just play it instead of having him be there live. But now Daryl Hammond does it. But there was a conversation about should Daryl Hammond just do it as Don Pardo,
just to keep the voice the same.
Just to keep the voice the same, but they opted not to. I kind of wish they had.
That's kind of like, I feel like, to sort of go off gears a little bit, but I kind of wondered that about The Simpsons too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I haven't really watched in the last, 10 plus years, but I mean, I know a lot of those folks have passed on. Like, who is it that does Mrs. Krabappel?
Marsha. Oh, yeah, she was
Bob Newhart's show.
Bob Newhart's secretary.
Yeah.
But like, I kind of wonder that on there too. Is like, did they get any form of replacements on that, or is it or just some of the characters?
It seems like with SNL or with Simpsons, if you do one character and you die,
they kill that
character off. But if you do multiple characters. So, like, you don't get Mrs. Krabappel anymore. They killed her off. You don't get Troy McClure anymore.
Yeah.
That's true. You don't. Yeah.
Yeah. But if someone does multiple characters, it seems like, although the people that do multiples are still around for the most part, but they're not kids.
Well, I also think, there's also characters that other people won't do anymore.
Well, for sure. That's, that's a different.
There's that too.
That's a different animal.
But you could get it. It's not. They're not killing. I don't think they're killing Abu off. Right?
No,
I think they just changed his voice.
They just changed the actor.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched it. Did they change how he sounds?
I haven't watched that show in
Yeah.
probably longer than Orlandez. Like it's been. I'll tune into the Halloween episodes.
Yeah.
But I don't watch it. That was like a religion in my house for a long time. Growing up,
I would say correlating to Saturday Night Live. For me, it was more so Saturday night, and then Sunday was the Fox lineup.
And like religion, we've drifted away.
Correct.
Yeah.
We come back every once in a while
for the big
Nice
holidays.
to reminisce.
Come back for the big holidays.
But then we'll be like, oh yeah, all right, that's fine. That's fine.
That's still there. That's fine.
Right,
Still
right.
exists.
Yes.
But this movie is so interesting because while it is about that hour leading up to SNL going live, it is kind of a Lorne Michaels story.
Oh, absolutely.
With him trying, fighting with, and they kept calling him this guy who was like running around with him. They kept calling him Dick, and I was like, is that supposed to be Dick Ebersol?
Yeah,
but then
that's
they
Dick
do
Ebersol.
say
Yeah,
it later. Who was like the content guy at NBC. He's the reason you had. This is the only wrestling thing you'll get. Like WWF Saturday Night.
Yeah.
Like that's when Saturday Night Live went on hiatus.
Because Saturday Night Live typically does 3 weeks on, 1 week off.
They would
or
bring
maybe it's
in
3 weeks on, 2 weeks off. But yeah.
Yeah, Saturday Night's main event would come in on those late
on those off weeks,
and they would do like these massive wrestling shows.
I did not know.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first like really leveling up for the WWF.
Big time.
Wow.
Because it was
Hulk
like
Hogan
it's
and-
on network television.
and
like,
in
can't
an
deny
at
it.
a not a bad time slot.
Right.
Oh
Like
yeah,
a time slot
well,
that
Saturday night, and
Yeah.
you've got. I'm sure my dad, he probably was watching. He loved wrestling.
They were huge.
Yeah.
Those specials were huge
I
until
just-
they weren't.
That I watched that Mr. McMahon documentary.
Yeah.
and a little
Still
weird
get to see that.
It's good. A little weird quirk about it. I noticed. I don't know if you know. Do you watch with the captions on?
No.
Okay. Every time they said WWF,
Yep.
and the closed captions, it said WWE.
Oh.
Which I thought was fascinating. 'cause
Every time? It wasn't
every
like
time.
a one flub?
No, it was repeatedly.
That's interesting.
Because at first I thought, oh, typo, and then it was like every time, and so, but it was like, but they were referring to it like at that moment in time that they're referring, it was the WWF.
I mean, I grew up with WWF.
It is
I
the weirdest
remember.
when they lost that lawsuit which they didn't have to lose. Like they lost it on purpose so they could get rid of the federation and add entertainment. They had to go through all of their footage and edit out all of the Fs that
Yeah.
were like on the turnbuckles or on the
Wow.
everywhere. And then
even on the old, like the
Even-
old stuff.
even on
so
the
when
old
you
stuff.
watch like catalog stuff,
the F, if it's a logo, like
Yeah.
if they say it, sometimes they'll edit it out. But if it's like a logo on a turnbuckle, on a microphone,
Oh, wow.
They've
they'll
literally
they'll
blemished.
blemish the F.
wow,
It's wild. Like that's how bad he wanted to get away from professional wrestling and be sports entertainment.
Wow.
Like that's But
So that wasn't mandated through the court case. He just
they'll
made-
say that
just
they'll
a-
say that it was.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but it was.
But that was all McMahon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He hated professional. He hated the term professional wrestling. He saw the WWF as Disney, and we make movies, we make this stuff. So
It's a brand.
It's a brand. So we're not professional wrestling. We're entertainment. We're sports entertainment, which was also another way to get around athletic commissions
Right.
in cities. Like we're not real. We're not
Yeah.
we're not a real sport. We're an entertainment, and that's what he would do.
Whoa.
And now that he's out of the picture, that is kind of lessened. Like now that he's no longer involved with the company, they've kind of like taken a step back and been like, well,
We know what we are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like seeing Lorne Michaels, who I think in my experience has always kind of been like this sort of square of a guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like they always kind of portray him as this square, trying to being kind of a hippie, sort of, and
Yeah.
like, look, the old ways are wrong. Like we've got to move forward. When he describes what Saturday Night Live is to Willem
Finally.
Dafoe,
And everyone's
which
asking,
I think is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that he's like, we'll get there. Like it's a lot of fun to watch him try to juggle all of this stuff, and get this show off the ground that may not work.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
And what's funny is I feel like a lot of that aspect, of course, is true. I was telling Tom there's a really great documentary that came out maybe about 20 years ago or so when they were having like their 30th anniversary, and it's just about the first 5 years.
Yeah.
And they talked to Lorne and a lot of the cast members and things, and they say that, everyone was asking, like the big wigs at NBC, Fred Silverman and everybody was just like, what's this going to be about? And he's like, oh, well, Albert Brooks is going to do some films and Jim Henson's going to do the Muppets. And,
Yeah.
and then this new guy, Chevy Chase, is going to fall a lot. And they were just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Okay. And kind of, I feel like they talk about in the film that they were expecting it to fail.
Yeah.
But I think they wanted it to fail.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted to prove a point to Johnny, being like, hey.
Well, the Johnny stuff is not entirely accurate. Like,
And like there wasn't a contract dispute.
so they
Because
were.
I know that they said that I think he wanted to have reruns on, was it Monday, so he could have a 3-day weekend?
Right.
or-
So what happened? So the movie makes it sound like they're having a contract dispute, and NBC is they want this to fail so they can keep Carson in the slot. And really, what it is they had been airing Carson reruns on Saturday nights and making a ton of money.
Sure.
Like there were years where they made more money off Carson than they made off of their primetime program.
That's wild.
Like
Wow.
that's how big Carson was.
And at that point, I mean, he had already been involved, Johnny, in was it 20 years or maybe
I'm trying to
15?
think,
Or
probably more like 15.
yeah, because
but
was he replaced Jack Parr?
so the Tonight Show goes. So it starts with Steve Allen,
Right.
and then from there it goes to Jack Parr, and then Jack Parr was super huge, even though he's kind of forgotten the time. Jack Parr was incredibly popular. And they thought he was unreplaceable. And then it goes into this, they're just kind of rotating hosts for a while,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what to do. And then they finally plug in Carson. And I really think they kind of thought Carson was going to fail. And they were like, we need a guy to come in and not. There's this saying.
Do the Jack Parr thing.
There's a saying in radio where they say, you never want to be the guy after the guy.
Yeah.
You want to be the guy after the guy after the guy.
Yeah,
Right?
sure,
Like,
sure.
it's like if you have a big morning show and that guy leaves, everybody's going to hate whatever comes next. So you want to let whatever comes next come and go and then be that guy.
He's like,
right?
look, I'm not that bad.
Yeah. And so, and in the early years, like Carson was struggling and that's why a lot of those early years, there's no footage of it. They weren't even bothering to
interesting.
record it. Right. And so, and when he first wanted to take a vacation, he would do guest hosts, which is funny because you don't really see guest hosts.
No,
anymore,
not
right?
anymore.
But he would
Yeah.
do guest hosts and
Well, they'll do clip shows now.
they'll do, yeah.
Yeah.
But for a guest host, he was like, well, I don't want to bring in somebody that's like comparable to me, right? Because if they
there
like
goes my job.
they like them, they're gonna. So he's like, so like, what I need is somebody who is, one, too popular to want the job, right? And is also so good that if he is better than me, no one's going to be mad at me. They're going to be like, well, of course that guy is
Right,
better
right.
than him.
Yeah.
And if for some reason he doesn't do well, then they'll be like, wow,
Carson's pretty
Carson's
good.
even better than this guy. So the first guest host of the Tonight Show was anybody?
I was thinking it was Joan Rivers, but
Groucho Marx.
oh
He wanted
wow,
Groucho Marx because he's
Wow.
like, Groucho Marx is a comedy legend, and if he's better than me, of course, and if he's not better than me, like
Of course. Nothing to lose.
then I look great.
Right.
And no matter what happens, there's no way Groucho Marx is going to take over a late night talk show that he has to do 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Also, keep in mind back then, the Tonight Show was 90 minutes long.
Yeah, that's long.
And so over time, Carson shortens it to 60 minutes, and then he starts doing like a lot of guest hosts. And so, I mean, there were lots of guests. Bob Newhart guest hosted it. Bill Cosby. Like, I mean, I think Bill Cosby has the record for most
guest
guest
spots?
hosts.
Wow,
He
I
hosted
would have thought that would have been Joan.
He
I
hosted
thought
that
too.
thing a lot in the 70s.
Okay.
And then also, I mean, he was in his peak, but Steve Martin, I'm sure did.
I don't think he ever guest hosted. He was on it a lot.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he ever actually hosted.
Huh.
But so anyway, so then Carson wants to do repeats, and he realizes that the repeats that are airing on Saturday is cannibalizing his ability to run repeats during the week and take a night off. So he wants to get this show down to where he only has to work 3 days a week. And so like there'll be a guest host on Friday and repeats on Mondays or something like that.
Right.
So he wants that to go away. And so they're fighting over that. And so NBC decides to plug in this thing. Now Carson did not have like the vitriol towards SNL,
That
like
they portray in
the
this movie.
open film.
the openly wanting it to fail.
Yeah.
But he also didn't like it.
Sure.
He thought it was lowest common denominator, lots of drug jokes. It was not. He did not like it. He did not have an SNL cast member as a guest on the Tonight Show until 1983.
Whoa.
And even then, it was Gilda Radner after she had left SNL.
Right.
So my guess is, I haven't checked this, the first probably sitting cast member, like currently performing cast member of SNL that he had on was
Maybe
probably Eddie Murphy.
It had to be. That's the only one that would make
and
sense.
he loved Eddie Murphy.
because he's a genius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, so's Belushi.
I mean, that's
so's
true.
Bill
That's
Murray.
true,
So's,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of geniuses that go through SNL.
Is okay, as we get into, is that kid that they find in the bar, is that supposed to be Bill Murray?
No, that's Alan Zweibel.
Okay, so that is a real person.
No, yeah, he's
Okay.
a writer. He's a legendary writer.
Okay, okay.
I think he dated Gilda Radner for a while.
The way they had him look, like in the
Yeah.
clothes, I was like, "Are you like?" I wasn't sure if Bill Murray is his real name.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
it is.
Okay.
Yeah, because even if his brother's Brian Doyle.
Oh yeah,
Murray,
you're right.
yeah.
You're right. I was like, if they're saying that, like, because
Bill Murray. Here's a fun little piece of trivia. Bill Murray at this point in time would have already been on a network variety show called
I don't know.
Saturday Night Live.
Well, he tried out for the original cast, right?
So the movie never really addresses this. The reason it's called Saturday Night is because the name of the show is Saturday Night.
Right.
It's not called Saturday Night Live until I think at the end of its second season. So there's a show on ABC that airs in primetime at this point in time called Saturday Night Live with Howard Cosell.
Yeah. Oh.
And Bill Murray is a cast member on there.
Oh, see, that I didn't know.
Yeah, as is Brian Doyle Murray.
Okay.
And it's really bad, and it only lasts like 18 episodes, but they couldn't call it Saturday Night Live
Because there was already no one
because
out
there was
there.
already a show called that.
Interesting.
And so they let that thing kind of run its course, and then I think going into the third, it's Saturday Night for the first 2 seasons if memory serves, and then in the third season it becomes they go ahead and take that name over and call it Saturday Night Live, which is why they say Live from New York. It's Saturday
Night.
because they're technically saying the name of the show
Right.
at the time. Right?
Interesting.
But now it would sound dumb to say Live from New York. It's Saturday Night Live, right? That sounds silly.
Did they never use that intro though? It was always at Live from New York. It's Saturday night.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
They never changed it, even though
Right.
they technically changed. I guess they could thought, well, we already said live.
Just
Like,
keep it.
People get it. People get it. It was already iconic. Don't
Yes,
mess with it.
right.
Yeah.
So I did think that was an interesting little. I was like, oh dang, like that's fun. But it is. I don't disagree. Where there are moments, with the guy playing Andy Kaufman, where it's like they're running through the dress. And I absolutely believe Andy Kaufman showed up to the studio
With a
in
character.
character,
Yeah.
and everybody would just bought it. Like I don't think anybody really knew because he wasn't on.
But this crowd would have known what Andy Kaufman was, right? Because he was doing
I think
this
he's
in
doing
clubs.
stand-up.
He's
sure,
doing
sure,
this
sure.
in clubs.
It's like
so-
prior to Taxi.
Right.
Right.
And so, like, because Belushi even says, like, oh, I saw him, I think, at the Comedy Store or something. And so, like, the comedy world knew what Andy Kaufman was, and that it was totally unlike anything anyone had ever
Now, as
seen.
far as network television, that may have been his first time ever on.
Maybe.
you know.
Yeah, it's possible doing the Mighty Mouse gimmick.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is great. The whole portion, because I've owned the first 5 seasons on DVD,
Sure.
and like I've seen that first episode millions of times, and God, I forget the actor's name. I know he was in Succession, and who played Andy Kaufman in the film.
Is that
Oh.
Nicholas Braun? Is that?
It sounds right.
Yeah.
This is
yeah,
I
Nicholas
will,
Braun.
That is something I did want to. Well, if you do your thing, and then I'll talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say he just hit that. I was like watching it, just gave me goosebumps. 'Cause
And
I
he's
was just
also
like,
Jim Henson.
yeah, yes,
The Jim Henson one was eerie.
He's playing both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when Jim Henson, when he first shows up in the film, I was just like, wait a minute, am I?
Yeah.
Is this, you know?
Did you deep fake Jim Henson on this guy? Like, what's
Yeah.
happening?
I was like, there's no way that he's doing both of these characters.
Right.
And then when they do the ending credits, I was just like,
It was supposed to be for Andy Kaufman. It was supposed to be Benny Safdie.
wow.
Did he
Yeah.
just bow out?
He had to drop out, like scheduling conflicts. I forget. I don't know why.
Wow.
But
I
yeah.
will say about this cast, they do a fantastic job of nailing. I feel like everybody.
I think we're gonna look back at this cast in 20 years, like we look
and
back
be like,
at,
oh, there he
at
is.
Dazed and Confused,
Yeah.
or
Well, that's
Fast Times
the,
at Ridgemont High.
the Chevy
or-
Chase guy, who was on Gotham as the
Oh,
Riddler.
really?
Okay.
Like that's where I knew him from. It was unbelievable the way he was able to capture how much of a prick
Yeah.
Oh,
Chevy Chase was and is. Like let's
Yeah.
be honest.
My
Like,
girlfriend automatically knew, like looking at the trailer, she was just like, oh, that's Chevy
Yeah,
Chase.
It's funny.
right.
During the movie, my wife leans over and she's like, "Is Chevy Chase like always a dick?" And I was like, "Oh yeah,
Yes.
I
absolutely.
Notoriously.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he is into this show, right? But he's schmoozing with the bigwigs.
Yeah.
As soon as Willem Dafoe's character walks up and he's like, "Hey man, you've got it. Like we're gonna be looking for a replacement for Johnny at some point." He's like, "You're a good-looking guy. You got the right name. You got the right blah blah." And I love the fact that you can see Chevy Chase being like, "Fuck these guys."
right."
Like he's talking to everybody about, what am I doing here? And that's the Garrett Morris thing as well.
Yeah.
But even Chevy Chase is like, you could see me moving up, right? Like I'm too big for this.
Yeah.
Even before the show, episode 1 is even on the air. He's like, I'm
Chevy
too
Chase
big for this.
has. I mean, okay, like he's a dick. He's extremely talented.
Absolutely.
And he's always kind of had things handed to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, don't forget, this is a guy that turned down being in Steely Dan. Like,
Oh, what?
yeah.
I knew he was in a band prior
he's
to.
he's a really good drummer.
Yeah.
For some reason, you'll find lots of comedians are really good drummers.
Maybe it has to do
So
with timing?
I don't know what else to chalk it up to, but like Chevy Chase is a drummer, Dana Carvey's a drummer, Johnny Carson's a drummer. That's just off the top of my head. I know there are
Interesting.
more, but like it's in the same way that in rock and roll you find a lot of guitarists that are really good at math and science, right? Like
Huh.
Brian
This I
Mays.
never knew.
Brian Mays, an astrophysicist. James Young from Styx is like a math
JY, really?
Yeah, is like got like an
Interesting.
advanced math degree. Skunk
I wonder what that is.
Skunk
Jeff
Bass-
Skunk Baxter
from the
Doobie
Brothers
and Steely Dan.
And Steely Dan, like I mean, he like advised the government on like rocket technology.
What?
Like, yeah,
the
like
hell?
yeah. And so I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's like that guy's always had things kind of just handed to him.
Yeah.
And so, and this is another thing. This NBC executive who's a real person.
Yeah.
He said later, like they weren't already looking at him for the Tonight Show, but he said later about the comment that he makes in the movie about how he says something to the effect of he's the only what do you say? He's like the only white Gentile comic working today.
Oh.
And so he's like, so if Johnny's gonna go away, who else are you going to turn to?
Sure.
basically?
Now, also, correct me if I'm wrong with Chevy, kind of post SNL with the films and everything, but I feel like those first few years, he didn't really have a lot of hits. Like
No, I
Foul
think
Play.
Foul Play's a hit. Like
That was a hit?
Oh my God, the Foul, like he had lots of hits. It's just over time, those movies, they don't live in the public consciousness
Like
Caddyshack,
Caddyshack does, or
right?
Vacation,
But like
or-
Foul Play was a hit. Seems Like Old Times was a hit.
Interesting.
Like, like no, I mean he was
He kind of had it.
He
like,
did.
boom, boom
Memoirs
for
of
a
an
while.
Invisible Man. No.
Yeah. Well, and
Not a
that's
hit.
why when he comes back to guest host in season 2, so I think
Yeah.
he leaves like 6 episodes in the season 2 to do his film thing. They bring him back towards the end to guest host, and he comes back just, even.
Oh, I can't even
douchier.
imagine
Because
the ego
now
on that guy.
He's a movie star.
Right,
Like
right,
Foul
right,
Play is a big hit, and it's a fun movie. I think it's been a little bit since I've seen it, but I remember it holds up pretty well. It's also a movie that I think introduced the public for the most part to Dudley Moore, at least the American.
Oh, okay.
He has a couple scenes in that movie where he totally steals, but he comes back just like, well, now I'm a movie star. And
Yeah.
he spent the whole week like, hey kids,
Yeah, geez.
and
And it's probably the same people that he worked with, right?
oh, I mean, it's season two.
Season two.
Yeah,
Like he had been
I mean,
a cast
I think
member
Bill
months
is maybe
before.
the only addition if he's even there
No,
yet.
he's there because
is there?
this is when him and Bill Murray get
into
a fist
it.
fight.
Yeah.
Oh,
like literally seconds before Chevy's about to go out and do the monologue to open the show. They're literally trading punches.
Jesus.
And I think like another thing where I talk about this movie, like
You think the Belushi fight is
I
the
think the
Murray
Belushi
fight?
fight is really the Murray fight,
Oh.
and they're just trying to show you that like it could get like that.
Sure.
I'm not aware of Chevy Chase
Chevy and
John
John.
Belushi ever.
I could
trading
see
blows.
Chevy Chase busting Belushi's balls like that.
And I could see Belushi beating the living out of him.
Yeah.
I don't see that even remotely
No.
being like he would kill him.
No, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
And so
because were they both? I forget. Was it like the Growlings or
Well,
National Lampoon?
It was Aykroyd and Belushi and
Gilda.
and there was somebody else. I thought that they were like.
Was Michael O'Donoghue involved with?
No,
I
because
think Michael O'Donoghue came from I believe the National Lampoon end of things. So you had the National
That
Lampoon
tracks.
magazine and the National
Yeah.
Lampoon Radio Hour.
Right.
And the National Lampoon Radio Hour scooped up
into
a lot of the Second City people.
Yeah.
And then you had this production in Canada of Godspell that's like legendary. And it's like, and that production of Godspell was like Paul Schaefer, Gilda Radner, I think Eugene Levy maybe. Like,
Oh,
like
okay,
yeah, maybe
okay.
Catherine
Catherine
O'Hara
O'Hara,
too.
Andrew Martin maybe. But
John
like
Candy.
it's like this production of Godspell is just like bonkers.
Yeah.
Like who was in it in retrospect. And like people went crazy for it, and then they started getting picked off. And then Lorraine Newman was with
So
the
I think-
Groundlings.
I think it's.
Yes.
I think it is. Lorraine Newman does have on one of the SNL anniversary episodes. She and Aykroyd come out and like talk about Belushi, and there's a pretty funny bit where he's like, we're auctioning off things that Belushi left at my house, and it's like www.thingsbelushileftатmyhouse.com, and you can go there. But it was like all a joke. But they were out there together, so I do think that like Belushi, Aykroyd, Lorraine Newman, Gilda Radner were kind of like that, a clique maybe
Yeah.
together.
Well, I think he dated both of them.
I think you're probably right.
Well, and then also Lorne, is he Canadian?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and
That guy was amazing. Like the guy that played Lorne Michaels,
Yeah.
I thought was absolutely fantastic.
did he also? I hadn't seen it because I was reading a review about the film. But did he also play Steven Spielberg?
In what?
I'm not sure. I thought there was like a film.
Yeah, he's
that-
in The Fablemans.
Oh,
Yeah. He plays he plays the fictionalized version of
Okay.
Spielberg in
Okay.
Fablemans. Yeah.
But he even like he has moments. You know, I think the running gag is that Mike Myers used Lorne Michaels as the basis for Dr.
for
Evil.
Dr. Evil. And also Kids in the Hall used it
Oh, did they?
in Brain Candy.
Oh, really?
Like,
Oh, wow.
the villain in Brain
That's
Candy
really
is also
funny.
based on Lorne Michaels. The one that which one did it? I'm blanking. But yeah, but
that's another underrated that doesn't get talked about enough.
but that's a Lorne Michaels thing too.
Oh, is it really?
He like turned Kids in the Hall into a TV
I
show.
didn't know
and
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that one, and then there's The Whitest Guys You Know,
Yeah.
which is also very funny.
I remember some of that when it came out.
Yeah, oh, man, it's very good.
Yeah.
The Glory Hole episode, the sketch is great. But like even he, you know, for the most part, he's not putting on a voice, but Lorne Michaels does have a very specific cadence or sound to his voice.
Yeah.
And it would slip
It
through.
would kick
Yeah.
in sometimes. Like, and it's funny, like normally I would be like, the guy can't hold the accent. And I think it's like Lorne Michaels isn't fully formed yet.
Yes.
And you see these moments of these affectations that you think of as Lorne Michaels, you know,
100%
come through.
Especially the little pout that he does.
Yeah.
And every once in a while that pout would kick in and I'd be like, Oh,
There
there's
it
Lorne
is.
Michaels. Yeah.
Something else I read, I forget what article it was, but I read an article about the film before seeing it, and Ivan Reitman, who created the film, he said one of the
You mean Jason Reitman?
or yes, Jason Reitman, sorry. One of the things that he told the cast was do not contact any of the main. I think I forget who, but a few of them they did break that rule.
Yeah.
How many are left though from the original cast?
I'd be surprised. I think the
think-
only dead ones are Gilda Radner
And Belushi.
And Belushi. The rest of them are
I mean,
like
definitely we know Aykroyd and Chase. And
Aykroyd is
Garrett
still
Morris
alive.
is still alive?
Garrett Morris is
I
still
mean,
alive.
Two Broke Girls. That
Yeah,
that ended what
3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
he's
that's-
older. He's quite a bit older than the rest of the
Yeah.
cast.
I thought he was great.
Because he was already an established working actor. Like he wasn't known,
Right.
you know.
he
but-
was in. I mean, he was in like Cooley High. And
Yeah,
that was
and-
3 years before.
and
I
he
think
was
his
a,
debut.
he had written plays that had been
Yeah.
produced. He was a professional singer. Like all that singing stuff is true. The thing where he sings,
That's not from that episode, right?
he does.
No, but
yeah.
the ending with the I'm gonna get me a shotgun.
kill all the
That's
whiteys I
one of
see.
my favorite
Yeah.
sketches. Yes.
Yeah, and I guess apparently that's based on he was on a show.
Yeah, there was a show that that he saw as a kid, Truth or Consequences.
Yeah.
And he said there was an old white lady that got up and sang a song.
And sang basically,
and it wasn't Kill All the Whiteys I
the
See.
opposite. It was like the white version
Yes,
of that song.
of that.
And people
Right.
were just like, what a nice nostalgic
Yeah.
number. And he's just like,
God.
what the holy hell? And
Yeah,
so-
that
What a
episode
nice
is that
nostalgic
episode is
number.
hilarious. I forget who hosts it. But yeah, they're doing like the Broadway production of Gigi.
Yeah.
And it's prisoners that come in and they get to audition for
Yes,
it.
you're
and
right, you're right.
yeah, it's pretty great.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But it is fun to look at this snapshot, and then but you see the guy, trying to get Belushi to sign his contract, and he's just impossible to deal with.
And that part's true.
Absolutely.
yeah, that
That
I
part's
was
true.
curious about.
I believe
he,
that's-
he did not sign his contract until minutes before.
Seriously.
And it was Benny Bernstein, something like that. He's a Brillstein. He's a very famous manager.
Oh,
okay.
And he represented Lorne Michaels.
Yeah.
And he came up to Belushi I think like an hour or so before the show. And he's like, "Buddy, you really need to sign this." And he's just like, "I don't know." And he's just like, "They're not gonna let you on TV." And he's like, "I'll sign it if you manage me." And he's like,
Make me a manager.
and he's like, "Okay, fine, sure, just sign it." And he was like, "I had no idea who this kid was." He's like, "I just didn't want this show to not go on the air."
Sure.
And so I was like, "Sure, I'll manage you." And he's like,
Little did
looking
I
back,
know.
he's like, "Oh, that was like one of the best decisions he ever made."
Sure, 100%.
But he was just trying to like get the show on the air.
Yeah. So it is like the show. This movie is like a perfect time capsule because I feel like it times it fairly well leading up to it. But you've got Lorne Michaels dealing with lighting issues. You've got Billy Crystal trying to all right, if you can, we're not going to make this show, but if we
Yeah.
can cut our act down. That guy that was Billy Crystal was great.
and his comedic,
Great.
what was it, comedic partner, Valerie, I forget her last name, but I think she was in that first episode.
She's on that first
Right,
episode.
uh-huh.
Yeah, she told. Now, in the movie, they present that as like, is he
They went
wouldn't-
against each-
he wouldn't budge, and in reality, what happened was, his managers
Oh,
were like, "No, Billy needs the 8 minutes, and if you can't have it, he won't do the show." And he was mad.
Billy Crystal was
Billy
mad?
Crystal was mad because he wanted to do the show. He wanted to try to figure out a way to do it.
Right.
And he ends up being on the show. I think he's on episode 6.
Okay.
But
But was he was a cast member though, right? But that was
No.
like that.
I think that was late, or not late 80s.
he becomes a
like
cast
mid-80s.
member
Later.
in season 10.
But that's like that murderer's row of
right, where it's like
Him,
it's like him,
Christopher
Martin
Guest.
Short, Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer.
Yeah.
I think Julia Louis-Dreyfus
Yeah.
is on there still.
It's
at that
like
point.
right after, I think Eddie had just left. I don't know if Piscopo was still on.
But this is when Lorne was out, right?
I think Dick Ebersol was
Yeah.
the producer.
Yeah, like he brings in. He's like, "Well, why are we bringing in unknowns? Let's bring in
Right,
knowns."
right,
But
right.
then,
It wasn't like Gilbert Godfrey on that like season 6.
yeah,
and-
Gilbert Godfrey is in that first cast after
Then
all
they-
the originals leave, because that's like Gilbert Godfrey, Charles Rocket, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then because then after they do the season of Ringers, they try to do it again, and then they bring, and then that's like almost as famously bad as the Gilbert Gottfried Charles Rocket one,
Right.
where it's like Randy Quaid, Robert Downey Jr.,
Oh,
Anthony Michael
yeah.
Hall, Joan
Damon
Cusack.
Wayans, I think, was he a part
He
of
was
that
on it
one,
for
or?
a cup of coffee.
Yeah, Damon Wayans was on it because the Homeboy Shopping Network actually started on
there.
SNL. It was
Yeah.
him and Anthony Michael Hall. I've never understood how that wasn't IP that was owned by SNL because
They took
like
it straight,
they did
straight
it
to
for
Mad
In
TV.
Living Color.
they took it to
Yeah,
In Living Color. And I was just like, when I saw it on In the Living Color, I was like, but that should be owned by NBC. I've never understood
Maybe
how that.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe Damon like wrote it, but even still, if it was on the
You,
show,
you write it while you're working for them.
That's
right.
They own
SNL's.
it.
Yeah.
That's just tale as old as time.
and I think
Right.
Lovitz a part of. He might have been a part of that season. I think.
He was definitely a cast member. I don't remember what season he was on though.
Yeah.
because
He
he
was
was
definitely-
on like a Misfire season, and they do a soft reboot, and they purge a good chunk of the cast,
Yeah.
but they kept him.
Him.
Yeah.
He was one of the ones that because he had
I
had
think of
a-
that liar skit with John Lithgow.
It's like he had the
Like,
liar and the,
acting.
he had the
Oh,
he
yeah.
had the liar and the devil, and they
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's
yeah.
what got him
Right,
to allowed to carry over.
But then
Yeah.
you've also got. I didn't realize Al Franken is here. Like I didn't realize he was there.
Yeah,
Oh,
him
yeah,
and Tom
from Elm
Davis
Street.
were writers for the show. And then, yeah,
The Julia Childs bit I think is hilarious.
And that was another one. I think that was like it might have gotten proposed earlier, but I don't think that really.
well, they say that here. He's like when
I'll put it on a
I'll
special
put on,
list.
and they both
Yeah.
are like special. But I do like the gimmick where he walks off the elevator and gets blasted with blood.
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, hey, Lauren," and he was like, "Hey, it's a little much, but I'll put it on a special list."
Yeah.
and they're like,
yeah,
because
because it's like that is not. I doubt that they would have had that really ready yet. The same
No.
thing with
Yeah, right.
the where you see Dan Aykroyd in the short shorts.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
like that. That's actually like episode.
a few episodes
8 or
in. I think like
9.
Lily Tomlin.
It's
was
a Lily
the-
Tomlin
host
sketch.
on
okay,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
and that's Dylan O'Brien.
Yeah.
From the Maze Runner, as Dan
Whoa,
Dan Aykroyd,
I just-
and I thought he was
I
fantastic.
just thought about that.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. He got Dan Aykroyd's voice
Yeah.
for the
I also
most part.
saw a
like,
tweet where Dan Aykroyd did tweet out, I think, over the weekend, and he was just applauding. his
Yeah, he
performance.
was
Like,
great.
this was
Yeah.
amazing.
he was
Took
he
me
was
back.
fantastic, and but that's the other thing is like this cast. Matt Rhys was George Carlin, if you know from the Americans or from the Perry Mason reboot on HBO. I could not figure out who that was,
Yeah.
but I was like, man, this is eerie. I like that Carlin gets lockjaw from too much
Oh,
cocaine.
the coke thing, yeah.
And like Dan Aykroyd has to like massage his jaw
Yeah.
to get his.
And I don't think
you
he
know.
had lockjaw, but he was definitely
was-
coked up.
Oh,
Like, 'cause
yeah.
I watched an interview with him with the American Television Academy Museum
Sure.
or something, and he was talking about how he's like, and he didn't want to.
He
He was
didn't
like,
wanna do any
I'm not
skits."
going to do any sketches. He's like, I'm not an actor, and he's like, I don't want to do any sketches.
So is the
And
whole scene with him in the toga gear? I guess
I think that's true.
I watched it last night. I watched the first episode last night.
Yeah.
That
same.
toga, I don't remember that toga.
No, it got cut.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. But it's pretty accurate about the way the show was
A
paced.
lot of it.
When did the format change where the host does because like Carlin's not doing a monologue. Carlin's just doing like a stand-up bit.
Kinda
doing stand-up,
throughout.
A stand-up bit. So when did that change? When did the format change to where you get a monologue and then we roll into
I think pretty quickly because
Okay.
like they could have Carlin do stand up in place of a monologue because he had stand up to do. But when you're bringing in Elliot Gould
or
I want to
Candace
say
Bergen,
Yeah.
they don't have stand up, so they would just start writing monologues.
I was
Okay.
gonna say I kind of feel like the Candace Bergen episode. I think that's like the 4th episode or so is when you start to get a bit of a
firmly
kind of
established
structure.
rhythm.
so it feels like the Paul Simon one. He's just playing music.
Yeah, Paul
Yeah.
Simon
Yeah.
and George. I think is George Harrison the music
think so,
guest too.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like there's the bees. They do that
Right.
whole thing. But then it's more so just kind of like a live on concert. You know, on NBC.
Well, and keep in mind, like this, like variety shows were very much a popular form of television
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Right. And so variety shows don't really kind of die out until like the late 70s. This is kind of the last gasp of
Yeah.
variety shows. So
Well, he
when
did
it
the whole
first-
Milton Berle thing with he's
Yeah.
down there doing the variety shows.
yeah, and I don't think that was
Even
true.
the thing where he
Oh,
takes
really?
the lighting guy from there and it's like you're hired.
Yeah.
I could see that being where like they lose their lighting guy because Lorne has a way he wants this show to look, and he's got
Well, and the
so
other
many...
lighting guy was almost getting people killed.
Yeah, he almost dropped. Yeah, he dropped the lighting fixtures
During
on
dress rehearsal.
Gilda Radner and John Belushi. So I could see them being like, "Hey, we got a guy up on 17 that's..." And I like that even the guy, he's lighting this little variety show, and the other lighting guy's like sitting off in the side, and he's making fun of him.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Can't pay a lot." Oh no, he's like, "How much does it pay?" He's like, "That's the worst part," which I think is a great line. He's like,
Yeah.
"All right, I'm in," and leaves the show. I don't think you could just leave a show in the middle of it. I don't think that's probably what would happen. But I also like that, he wanted the set to look a certain way. So he's got a guy bringing in a bunch of bricks, and everybody's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And then nobody will help this guy lay the bricks until...
What is it, like right before the audience comes in?
You've got Chevy Chase laying bricks. You've got all these different people.
It
That
definitely becomes like, "Hey kids, let's put on a show."
all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And I think it's after he kind of gives the rah-rah speech about what Saturday Night Live or what Saturday Night is going to be. I also think it's super tense when Willem Dafoe's character's like, "Look, this isn't..." Oh no, I guess it's Dick Ebersol, where he's like, "They're not gonna let you do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is all just a ploy to screw around with Johnny Carson. You're gonna count down. You're gonna be in the control room. We're all gonna be there. And when they say, 'Are we going live?'" which is also Robert Wool, which I thought was kind of great. Like, I was like, "Hey man, good Arliss, what's up, bud?
Yeah.
Like, good to see you." And he's like, he's gonna stop it. He's gonna point to the thing, and they're gonna go to a rerun. And I do think that's
the tape queued up.
He's already
now
got...
that I feel like is true because
so they had a movie queued up.
Yes,
but
and-
it was Lorne Michaels
who said you might want to do
who
that
wanted
just to
to
be
have-
safe.
Like,
Okay,
that was
okay.
not done to him. That
Right.
was
He was
done
like,
by
just
him.
in case.
Yeah.
But I do like the fact that it's a very tense moment where Robert Wool is like, "What are we doing? Are we going live? Are we going to tape? Are we going
Yeah.
live?" And Lorne Michaels looks over at Willem Dafoe's character, and it's the most ridiculous. I don't think this has happened. Where he's like, "We're going live," and I was like, "Well, that was ridiculous."
I wish we'd have gotten more insight as to why that guy decided to go live, because the way the movie presents it is he definitely wants them to fail.
Oh yeah.
So I was confused as to why he let them.
Well, I mean, the way they play that is they do... Garrett Morris does the song. Chevy Chase does Weekend Update. And they do Mighty Mouse.
Right.
And the crowd and everybody, the crew reacts.
Yeah, but if you want it to fail, the easiest way to make it fail is just be like, it wasn't good enough to make it to air.
Oh, sure.
And just
I think
strangle it in
the
his
movie's
crib.
supposed to portray it as like
even he couldn't deny.
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
He couldn't deny what was happening.
Now, one thing I am curious about, because Joe, you just brought up a good point. I thought about it again. Was Lorne in the movie doing Weekend Update?
Yes.
Was that true at first?
Yes.
And not Chevy? Wow.
That was true. It was not decided to flip it at the very last minute.
Sure.
But originally he was going to host Weekend Update.
I was just sitting in the theater thinking about that, and I was like, how in the hell would that have played out?
Exactly,
Lorne
probably how we
Michaels?
saw it in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it would have been real bad.
Yeah. Very
But
unmemorable
he
segment.
had been a performer. I don't
Oh,
know
is that
that
right?
it would have been as bad as the movie portrayed. He had been a performer. But he realized at some point that if I'm going to be deciding, if I'm going to cut somebody's sketch, but then I'm on every week,
Yeah.
that's
a
going
bit
to
of a conflict of interest.
Yeah, he's just that's going to cause bad blood, and he decided that it just made more sense for someone else to do it. And that's part of why Chevy Chase became so well known so quickly. If you think about it, he was the only actor, performer who said his name every week.
And he was by himself.
Yeah.
There was nobody else. I mean, that Weekend Update, I think what people tend to forget is it wasn't what it is now. It was
It was usually just one, after him, I think Jane got it. And
well,
then,
it was him and Dan Aykroyd and Jane.
It was Dan
right?
Aykroyd and Jane Curtin. Yeah, and so...
But I think some of season 2 was just Jane alone. And
Was
then
it?
I think after that,
Okay.
they did
Okay.
Dan and Jane, and then I think it was Jane and Bill for a while as well.
And then it just transferred to Dennis Leary. Not Dennis Leary. Dennis Miller.
Well, that would be
But I mean,
a decade later. You would have... so then during so when they completely restart, I believe it was Brian Doyle Murray was the host of Weekend Update.
Okay.
Oh.
And then Brad Hall was the host of Weekend Update. Who ends up married to Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Well done, sir.
Yeah, hat
Yeah.
tip. Yeah. And she has FU money
Oh yeah.
because I mean she had FU money before Seinfeld.
Because of her folks,
Her
right?
dad, like, have you ever heard of Arch Daniels Midland?
No.
It's like they're like grocery store to the world.
Okay.
And it's like, and her dad owns
Was like the founder
their
of that,
biggest
or-
competitor. I forget the name of it, but it's that kind of a company. The people that sell wheat to Europe.
Okay.
You know?
Wow. Okay.
And so, but and then Brad Hall, and then I think that's when you get the cast where,
and then
didn't Christopher
yes,
Guest do it?
yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
Christopher
you're
Guest
right,
did
he
it.
duration of the
Yep,
80s.
yep,
Yeah, and then you get Dennis Miller.
And then it became a one-man show until
didn't
until
Tina
Colin
Tina Fey
oh,
and Amy
man.
Poehler, I think.
Yeah, but who was in the 90s? Wasn't it?
that guy was terrible.
Yeah.
The guy after Norm Macdonald.
Well, Colin Quinn did it after Norm Macdonald, and then Kevin
Nealon.
Oh, Kevin
Kevin
Nealon.
Nealon
Kevin
did it.
Nealon was great.
Yeah,
I
Kevin Nealon was awesome.
I didn't care for Kevin Nealon. And
I thought he was pretty great.
Yeah.
That's like the Sandler, Chris Farley
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
years.
But
yeah.
Kevin Nealon always came off to me as like the 90s version of Chevy Chase.
I
Like,
could see that.
He wanted to, like, they kind of wanted that Chevy Chase character.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Kevin Nealon a lot. I think he's very funny.
Yeah.
But I always did kind of get that Chevy Chase vibe
Yeah,
from
I
him.
always like Nealon.
But then I think it wasn't two people until Tina Fey and Amy Poehler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Set-
becomes
and
Tina
then
Fey.
set-
Or did she do it with Jimmy? Was it Jimmy?
Oh, it was
Fallon?
Tina Fey and Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon leaves,
Oh.
then it becomes
Then
Tina Fey and Amy
Amy.
Poehler.
And then it was Seth Meyers.
And then it was Seth Meyers and Amy, and then Amy left,
It was
and then it
just
was just
Seth
Seth
Meyers and
then
did Cecily Strong, I think, do it
They tried her out,
for a bit.
and she should have gotten it.
She was great.
She
and,
was great.
Yeah, because it was him and her, and then
And maybe
yeah,
up
it was him
until
and
now,
her
like Colin
gearing
and-
up for him to leave.
Yes.
and then
She-
they pulled him out, and then she did it for like a season or a season and a half.
Yep.
and
then
then
Then up
they
until like now, is it Colin?
Colin and
and then it's
Jay.
been Colin and Michael Che.
And they're great. Like I
Yeah.
think there's
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever I don't like Colin Quinn at all. Like that's the misfire for me.
Yeah,
I like Colin.
some of his deliveries are on point.
yeah.
But yeah, so like just watching them try to that to me is the interesting is like how do you format this?
Yeah.
Like for a show that doesn't have a format
In
that's never had
1975,
Yeah.
it's never had
you know
anything
and
close
then
to this.
I love the fact that you've got Jim Henson kind of bouncing around and he's like I don't have script pages yet and he's like you'll figure it out. All right, bye. And Henson's just like I would really appreciate it if your cast would stop putting the Muppets in compromising positions. And I do love the two of them, who's Lorne Michaels and this other guy, who was
is it
in
Neil Levy? Is it because I know Neil Levy was like I think a writer or he's kind of the guy who's like his assistant sort
yeah.
of. Yeah,
But
he's
that's
like
the
that's
guy-
my cousin.
That's the guy from that Jennifer Lawrence movie, where the guy's parents hire
Oh,
him.
yeah, I saw that.
Whatever that, which was a good little flick. Like
yeah.
that was a good little movie. But he's like
and he takes the is
Oh,
it Paul
man.
Schaefer and
he takes
Howard
a hit.
Shore,
Who
I
is
think
Paul? Who is Paul Rust? Who does
Yeah.
it's great
perfect
yeah.
casting.
He has there's a great podcast called with Gorley and Rust. Matt Gorley, who is like Conan's. He's on the Conan O'Brien podcast. He does like all of the producing for the Conan. But him
Okay.
and Paul Rust are great.
I was
together.
wondering where I hadn't seen him in years.
He
Like
pops
honestly, dating myself since what was it the rom-com?
Oh,
I
Dear
love you,
Beth-
Beth
I
Cooper.
love you, Beth Cooper. Yeah.
like I saw that.
He was on that
show.
He was on Love.
on Netflix.
Oh, yes,
which
I
was
forgot about Love.
so good.
fantastic.
Yeah.
that's a
Judd
that's,
Apatow, was he involved? with
Yeah,
that, I
Yeah, I
think?
believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about the show. It's a great show.
But you go check out that pod. It's very funny.
Okay.
Matt Gorley is also underratedly funny. But yeah, he takes that hit of whatever there's, and it hits him hard and hits him fast. And I do love the scene where he's locked himself in an office, and Aykroyd comes up and he's like knocking on the door. He's like,
Yes.
hey bud, like we just want to make sure your face is still attached. And he opens the door. He's like, oh my god! And then the kid freaks out. He's like, I'm just kidding. I'm
So
just
that's
kidding.
another one I kind of liked a bit of a nod that they threw in. I think it was addressed a little bit later, but he kind of is reminiscent of the Jimmy Carter sketch where he's first gets elected and Bill Murray, I think, is playing Walter Cronkite, and there's a guy who calls, and he's just like, "Oh, I don't know who I am right now," and he's like, "Oh, Peter, you just took some Orange Sunshine, Peter. Do you have any Allman Brothers records?" But he's kind of doing the same thing.
Well,
with
they
him,
also
too.
do the Land Shark. Chevy Chase
Yes,
knocks on the
he
door.
says
He's like,
Land
Land
Shark.
Shark.
Yeah.
So like,
Well, no, he says Candygram.
Candygram,
Yeah.
which I do think.
And those are kind of the subtleties that are like.
Well,
that's-
I think in a worse movie we would be like, off,
Yeah.
Right.
you know,
But it's done in a way where it's like you see these little moments and it's
it's
like
not a wink at the audience, like,
yeah, and it's like it totally makes sense that it's like it's little in jokes that they have among themselves
Yes.
that they work into sketches that they're
And that's just, I mean, you guys know, but that's just who they were. Like, it was
Right.
like a college or like a high school. Like, one of the other instances, I know you guys know it, I'm sure, when one of the many times Buck Henry hosted,
Yeah.
and John Belushi was doing Samurai, but he was with a real damn sword and cut his, like, head.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, everyone has a bandage on their head. It's just kind of like, that's just the humor that they all shared.
it very much. This felt like
better than one on your ear.
It's also true. You're not wrong. You know, well, all right. I could go into that for a little bit, but it feels like a college frat.
Yeah.
You've got the girls who are kind of like all goofing off with each other
Yeah.
and doing their own thing. You've got
Not allowed
like
to
saying-
actually contribute.
Yeah, exactly. I love that scene with Jane Curtin and Garrett Morris up in the
Yeah.
seats where they're just like she just goes into kind of like a monologue, and Garrett Morris is like, "What the hell was that?" She's
Yeah.
like, "That's what I was doing before."
Right.
She's like, I just want to be here. I don't want to be in the spotlight." And then they get smashed with the spotlight. But it did feel. You think about Animal House, right? And you think about the way those guys kind of acted with each other.
Yeah.
That's what this felt like. This felt like everybody was kind of friends for the most part. Maybe not Belushi and Chase. Maybe. Don't
But
really know.
in a fraternity, it's like that.
Absolutely
I mean, I was
it
in a
is.
fraternity, and there were guys I couldn't stand.
And they were just in your
They're
in your
still
world,
there.
in your
But
orbit.
you're with them.
But you're with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that was another brilliant and probably hard thing to capture is the camaraderie that they all kind of felt together. And I don't know what it feels like now, right? Like I don't know what the cast kind of it feels like it's not a show run by the seat of your pants anymore.
No.
They've got a schedule, they've got, you know, they know
they need something, they're going to get it.
they
And,
know,
yeah.
you know, their dressing rooms are all
And
set aside. like-
Everybody knows that this is a springboard.
yes.
And it's just, can you stick the landing?
And honestly, sometimes it's not I think
it can be. I mean, it's a springboard if you do it right.
yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're on a big enough stage that if you can't pivot from this,
into something else.
it's because you can't pivot from this, right?
Right.
Like you don't, and
Or
but
you're
I-
just Kenan and you've gotten comfortable for the last
Yeah.
20 plus years.
I
But
wonder
there
if he
are
could,
also,
though. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if he can.
I mean, but I feel like with him though, it's just like I feel like there's been certain alleys or avenues that they've attempted. Like there was the show on NBC.
Yeah.
What else is Fat Albert
Yeah.
years ago? But
But wasn't he a kid for those? Am I wrong about Fat
I
Albert?
think he was still on.
No,
SNL. He might have been pretty
He was
fresh.
on SNL when he did.
He was?
Fat
Yeah, he's
Albert,
been
yeah.
on since what 03? It's
He's
been
been
over
on for 21 seasons.
Yeah.
I
But then
think.
how
Yeah.
many seasons of all that did he do? I mean, he was on that show from the inception, right? Like, so that
mid
kid,
'90s.
that
so
dude's been
kind of
working.
following from that to that.
That's a big jump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a normal size jump. What I mean is like, you know, the concept of what you were doing on all that is basically
It's
the
pretty comparable.
Saturday Night
Yeah.
Live
right.
light, you know. But I don't think and I don't know how much he's writing, because I don't think he's in a lot of sketches. I wonder if he's just doing a lot of.
Lately, it's been. I mean, like I watched last night, and he was, I'd say maybe about like 40%
Okay.
or so.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
so-
a pretty high number.
Yeah.
mean, that's,
I know,
you
like for Daryl Hammond for years, he was just on call. They left him as a cast member, and they were like,
Tim
"Hey,
Meadows.
we need somebody to do
Yeah.
this impersonation," and he wouldn't show up for the week. He would just show up on Friday. They'd give him the pages, and he'd be like, "Okay," and he would do.
Yeah,
You know?
I feel like Tim Meadows or even Fred Armisen were kind of in that world where they would just show up randomly, like, "Oh man, I
Yeah.
forgot that guy was even on the show."
Yeah.
But like, and then of course we get to the, you know, it's happening. Like, we don't think it's going to happen, and of course it happens. And here we are 50 years later, still talking about it. And I
Yeah.
think like this movie is exactly the kind of biopic that is what we need to start doing from now on.
Absolutely.
I don't need to see, I think Rocket Man does a pretty good job of encapsulating his not his entire life, but
kind of a certain
most part.
glimpse.
But it's
only
also
beef-
just fantastical enough.
Yeah,
you
my
know?
only beef with Rocket Man was just kind of even though it's Elton John, it's musical, but just I have a thing where it's just like out of nowhere, just and I'm just
I
like,
agree with
okay.
you.
So-
But to me, that one felt like that's what they were doing
because
Yeah.
it was dreamlike.
because it was
Yeah.
dreamlike,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When in Bohemian Rhapsody was like, hey, that's a pretty good beat. I'm gonna turn. It's like, go screw.
Like Runaways, I've always thought was a perfect example of that because
Oh,
it's like,
okay.
oh, here's Kim Fowley just with "Hello, Dad," "Hello,
Right.
Mom," "Cherry," but I'm like, that did not happen. No,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, it's the Aretha Franklin one's like that too, when she's like,
I actually never. Is that the Jay Hudson one?
yeah,
I never watched
where
that.
she's like, completely reworking Respect just instantly.
In 2 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Or like, and it's a great scene, but like the Ray Charles hit the road jack
Yeah.
scene. It's a great scene, but
But
like
it's
I'm
like-
like,
We're in the middle of an argument right now,
Yeah.
and just ding. Okay. One other thing I did like, I thought about this the other night with the film was the release date because
Of
October
course.
11th. That didn't equate with me until again
Yeah.
I pulled out my season 1 DVD and they have the air dates, and I was like, "Wow, this is
Yeah.
the same date." You
No,
know,
it's pretty wild that they got that timed. Like,
yeah,
next
pretty
year,
good.
I think technically would have been 50 years, but I mean that would have been a Saturday or something.
Yeah,
you
sure,
know,
sure,
with
sure.
theatrical days, Fridays, but.
I will say, I know I kind of bagged on Peacock. If you do have it, they've got them all.
Yeah.
Like they go from season 1 up to season 50. So
I don't think I actually knew this.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're all there.
Because my beef has always just been, and Tom knows this, of course, being the DVD hoarder that I am. And like, I was buying these. Like, I remember when they first announced that they were going to start reissuing all these. I think I'd like asked my dad for it for Christmas. Or I was maybe like 14. He's like, what the hell do you want season 1 SNL for? Okay, sure. But I just remember they were like pumping them out up until season 5. And I think they stopped. And being the big Eddie fan that I am, and I always read it was
what
due
timing?
to, yeah. And I always read it was due to music, which I'm like,
I
yeah,
will
that would
say-
be great.
I will
but-
say when they were on Netflix, there was no music.
Yeah, they
like
would skip
all of,
the
all
musical
of the
guests.
music
but
was taken
just the
out.
sketches.
Yeah,
but sometimes the sketches get bumped because they got music in them.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I know. I think I have one of the best of Eddie Murphy the DVDs.
I
and
got that
there's
DVD.
What sketch? It's him and Piscopo. It's the Beatles sketch where he's like, I taught Paul.
Oh,
Paul still
okay.
uses Afro Sheen, but a lot of that stuff they had to because these are Beatles songs,
Right.
And you can hear that it's just overdone.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but yeah, that's all on Peacock, and so I went back and watched episode 1 just to see where it lined up with everything, and it's
Another thing, speaking of music, was John Baptiste. That
He was great.
So,
yeah.
let's talk about the music for a second. So the music is great.
yeah.
I think that's a lot of like this movie is just panic inducing to watch.
It is very
we
much
talked a lot
so.
about the history of SNL, but we haven't actually talked as much about the film itself.
Yeah.
This film is panic inducing to watch.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like
They've got the
Birdman.
time throughout.
Yeah,
11:31.
Yeah,
10:31.
It's like Birdman, right? Like it's so. I mean, it's not one tracking shot, but it's
Yeah.
a lot of tracking shots.
Yep.
Which I love. Like I
Yeah.
love that kind of thing.
and you can tell that they're it's almost like they're doing a play and they drop the camera in the middle of it because it just everybody has to be doing their thing because maybe you'll be on camera, maybe you won't. And the way they wrote this score is they would shoot the scenes, and since a lot of them are like one take, at the end of the day they would take those scenes to John Baptiste, and then he would, with his band,
Score it in the moment.
improvise the
Wow.
score
Like, while it's
they were
showing.
watching, and so he'd be like trumpets here and piano here, like
That's
and they would
wild.
make it up as they
While
were
it was-
watching the movie, which I think adds to that kind of like
Oh
Panic
yeah.
induced.
panicky vibe, because the score has this very
it's
kind of
stand there.
choppy quality to it.
Uh-huh.
Like it's not like it's not melodic,
Yes.
right? It's lots of like just like bursts of
Yes.
of music
Yes,
coming
yes.
at you and then stopping, and then like you said with the drums and
That is very Birdman reminiscent. That's funny. Wow.
yeah. And so but yeah, the music like really like heightens the tension in a way.
Absolutely
I
does.
said on the radio, I'm like, this is the best movie Aaron Sorkin ever made. And I mean that as a compliment.
That's
you know?
funny because I've been rewatching The West Wing too
Yeah.
in the last like few weeks.
Especially
That's
if you
hilarious.
watch like Studio 60, which is trash. It's bad.
I've never seen.
It's bad.
That's
That's the one where it's like their version of Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And it's the pilot is great. Like if you ever decide to watch it, you'll watch the first episode and you'll be like, Tom is so wrong.
Get to episode 2.
This show's amazing. And then like about halfway through, you'll
through.
just be like, but it's never been remotely that good again. Like you just keep waiting for it to get good, and then at some point you just want to punch the show in the dick, and then you're just like,
Jeez, it sounds like Heroes.
yeah. I mean, it really kind of is. And then you're like, well, I can't stop watching now. Why? Well, because I hate it so much.
I gotta
I
see
gotta
how bad it
commit.
gets.
I gotta keep watching this thing
like
that
a
I
train
hate
wreck.
so much. Like but because I watched every episode, but
And it was only one
was it
season.
one
it's
season?
only one season because it started the same season as 30 Rock.
30 Rock,
And
yeah.
everybody was like,
Oh.
30 Rock will go away. It's the Aaron Sorkin show we're all going to be talking about.
Crazy.
And like, that pilot is like one of the best pilots I've ever seen in my life.
And that's
then-
funny. I remember like 30 Rock with iTunes. I remember they were like, "Here's the free episode of the week" or something.
Yep.
And download
Yeah.
that. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be watching this every week." you
Yeah.
know?
No, 30 Rock's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the look, the feel, and this. I don't know if they filmed this on location. If that's a set, like
I find it hard to believe that that's a set because that felt
I've
whether it's on
been-
stage or walking behind.
I've been there. Like
Yeah.
I did the 30 Rock tour.
Oh, cool.
And like SNL wasn't in production at the time, so they actually took us into 8H, which they
Wow.
don't normally do. And they were redoing the set. And so it was covered, but like we got to stand like at the back of the seats.
Okay.
And one, it's crazy how small it is.
Yeah.
Two, they only have 3 sets. And
So it's the main set and then one on either side.
yes.
Yeah.
And then like the stage or like the music stage, or is that one of the?
no, the music stage is one of them.
That's
They don't have a separate stage for the music. So like they're performing on one, they're setting up on one, they're
Because-
tearing down on one at all times.
Because like I wonder, is the
crazy.
monologue performed on the same stage as the music? I wonder, or I mean, since the
I think
band's
the
there.
music is right next.
So the only
to
reason I think the monologue is center.
Oh well, I know when you
monologues,
have
they
the
always-
announcers because they're like, and
they-
ladies and gentlemen, and then
Ba,
they'll
ba, ba.
yeah, that's a good
Foo
point.
Fighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, Foo
but
Fighters.
they took us through and they showed us like if you're in the audience, this is where they'll have you queue up. This is the room they'll have you wait in. So I saw all that. I mean, it looked just like what we were seeing on that screen.
I haven't-
just like it.
I find it hard to believe that they didn't use the real set.
Well, and you figure if he's shooting in the summer, they're not using that
Yeah.
area anyway.
Nope.
So like it's not out of the realm of possibility that they were able to
And I-
actually film on location.
And I also feel like if you're Jason Reitman and you're making a movie kind of about Lorne Michaels, you may have a little bit of an in.
if,
yeah.
if Lauren Michaels likes the script.
Correct.
But
And it
I-
feels like
this is a love letter to Lauren.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
So it's like, the only person I think who could watch this movie and be mad is Chevy Chase
oh yeah,
because they make
Yeah.
him look like an asshole.
I mean,
but he is.
That-
but he
that's
is an
what he
asshole,
was.
You know.
There
also,
are-
the other, not to cut you off, sorry,
No,
but
you're
the
fine.
other feature, kind of feature, if you will, or cameo, I thought was Finn. Finn
Yeah.
Finn
Wolfhard.
Wolfhard.
I was
Yeah.
just
He's-
like, why
he's a-
is he such a small role? Like you'd think.
Well, I just wonder where you're gonna put him.
Yeah.
He's definitely a buddy
Page.
of Jason. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He's definitely a buddy of Jason Reitman.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You
He's
know,
just doing him solid.
Throw him in there as
Yeah.
like the paper guy. That is a scene that we haven't really touched on is the censor.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. So there's the whole opening scene where Lorne Michaels is outside. You got Finn Wolfhard trying to hand, paper
He's
the
a
thing.
page trying to get bodies in seats.
And this flaming pile of paper just flops onto the ground, and they're just like, "What the hell?" Which comes, I think it's a great callback where we see Michael McDonough lighting
O'Donoghue.
lighting the script on fire
Oh,
after
jeez.
the
That
gal
whole
has
bit.
edited. Oh my god, it is.
Which is true. Again, they had so many. Like,
Yeah.
I think about the
Standards and
documentary,
practices and stuff.
and they said it was like one week where you know, they wanted to do like pussy whip, which is the whipped cream for cats. And they were like, you can't say that. And he's like, well, you let us say blue balls last week. And the writer's like, okay, I'll give you pussy whip this week since I gave you blue balls. He's like, just let us say it on the air. That's all we really care about. We no need to give it to you.
Trying to get golden showers on there.
Yeah.
And that was,
and they would deliberately put in like filthy things that they knew would get cut, so they would get other things through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We didn't talk about, and I do think we probably should, is Lorne Michaels' wife.
Yes.
Rosie Schuster.
Yeah, Rosie Schuster, who I don't think I realized was as instrumental in the birth of that show. But their relationship is very interesting. She is definitely Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And even Lorne Michaels is like, are you going home with him tonight? And she's like, why does it matter? And it's so like, I don't know what was going on there.
So apparently by this point, they were not together.
But had they been divorced?
But they didn't get divorced until 1980.
Because she does say,
and
we are married, but I'm not your wife.
Yeah, and that I saw an interview with her where she was just like, "What? Like, I just didn't want to deal with the bull being divorced." And so it was, and like nobody was really fighting over it, and it was just like whatever. But Dan Aykroyd was scared to death that Lorne Michaels was, and she was just like, "No, he doesn't care. Like, it's no big deal. Like, we're not really a thing. We just haven't officially done the paperwork."
I also thought, speaking of relationships within the cast too, they kind of kept alluding to, like, did you ever notice the character of Lorraine always looking, just being like,
well, because he definitely is flirting with her.
Right.
He's flirting with everybody.
Oh, everybody.
Yeah. Everybody.
He dated Lorraine and Gilda.
Which makes sense when you see the way Lorraine is looking at him. But also the Gilda and Belushi relationship. Like, when he's out there skating on the ice and she's kind of just, and they're just they're talking about, you know, this.
I like that speech
time.
about are you ever nostalgic for a moment while you're still
That's a
in it?
great. She is so
and
good.
it's so the kind of thing Gilda Radner would
absolutely.
say.
It is.
I forget her name. That actress. I know she's been in some things. I think what was it, Bottoms, the one film that came out.
Oh, the gal that plays Rosie.
No, that plays Gilda Radner.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know, but I know that the gal that played Rosie was in that.
Or maybe no. I think you're right. That's who I'm thinking about.
She was in Bottoms.
Yes.
She was also in that not slasher movie with not Pete Holmes, with
Bodies.
Yeah, she was like
I never heard of that.
That was very funny.
That's good.
It was good.
It was fun. Yeah. But like, you know, talking about them sneaking in things, like Dan Aykroyd, you know, is hitting on all the women using the same speech where he's like, I'm a trumpet, I'm a male trumpet, and like or trumpet. But like, that's a sketch that ends up on the show.
Fred
Garvin, male
prostitute.
Yeah. And but it's like, it's just patter that he's doing because Lorraine calls him on it.
Yes.
When she sees him doing it to someone else.
Correct.
Like it starts with her, and then she's like, oh,
I see. But I don't disagree. The way they shoot Lorraine, they kind of. I wish they would have given us a little bit more with her.
Yeah,
where she's like, I don't
agree.
know why I'm here. Like she's like, no, you're the hot one. Like you're the, you know, but you're very funny.
And just her, what's the right word for, like, adaptability? Like when she's in one, she's like, look, Lauren, and like takes off the costume.
I do like where he goes, hey, you did it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, that she was very, like from what stories that I've heard and like I've seen, she was very adaptable and kind of just like, you know, in it.
Yeah.
And just all for it.
I honestly, I cannot recommend this enough. It was such, I didn't know what this was going to be.
Yeah.
And as soon as it starts, I was like, I'm in.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I am in all the way. This is probably one of my favorites that I've seen this year.
Also, the filming of it, too. I think it was filmed in, like, 16 millimeter or...
They definitely had... I'm sure it wasn't filmed on film.
Yeah.
Maybe. But they definitely put, like, a grain on it.
Yeah.
A filter grain on it, which I liked a lot. Like, it wasn't overused. It wasn't... But it was just perfect enough.
Enough to take you back to that essence.
Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
it definitely had that kind of handheld...
Yeah.
cinema verite quality.
Yes,
like you felt like you were in it.
Yeah.
And
which I think it needed to be.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
I mean, this is I like I said, I love this movie. It's not very often where I'm like, I would like to see that again.
I think I would very much like to see this
I
again.
would like to see that again. Like it was
I kind
I've
of
already
want to
bought my ticket again for tonight.
I kind of want to see it with a commentary with Lorne.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm looking forward to like this Blu-ray or you know, whatever release.
If they can get him to talk about it, which I don't think he doesn't talk often.
He'll do interviews.
But once he goes, I feel like he'll,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
But I would be interested to see, like, okay, that actually happened. Like, actually, this person was over here. But
I read that there are 2 visual effects. They only used digital manipulation twice.
Oh, really?
And one was for the clocks. they said that when they did a screen test, like they said the test audiences were very aware of the clocks, and so the clocks needed to have the right time on them.
Interesting.
And I guess because the whole movie is like it's 90 minutes before showtime, so but that tells you the crowd's invested, right? They're looking at the clock like, how close are we? Are we gonna make it? And it's like, well, yes, we make it, because if we didn't make it, there wouldn't be a movie about it.
We're here 50 years
Right.
later.
It would be about the downfall of this attempted variety show.
Right. But
That never did.
And then the other thing was matching the skin tone on Milton Berle's penis.
That was such a wild scene that I could not, like, I'm sitting there, I was like, there's no way. Oh, there's the top of his dick. All right,
Yeah.
that's what that is. He's like, why don't you take 11 inches, step back about 11 inches.
And what you call it? Can't think of his name.
J.K. Simmons.
Oh,
Yeah,
J.K.
J.K.
Simmons.
is
Another
him. It's
Jason
like-
Reitman buddy, right? Like he's been in.
Oh, yeah, I guess he is, isn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah, you're totally
Yeah,
right.
he's used him a couple times.
Yeah. But yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth
And
your time.
That's a scene that like I don't think happened.
No.
I wonder if it was
now-
like a rumor.
What part?
The thing about him dressing down Chevy Chase.
I don't think that happened. I think this is
Because
more,
I think Milton Berle hosted eventually, but I don't think it was
He
while
says
Chevy
he says
on.
while he's like, we're gonna have Milton on episode 7 or whatever.
I forget. I think it's later than that, but he does come. He does host, and it's notoriously bad.
Oh.
And like everyone hated him, and he was basically banned from ever coming back. He was he was so hated. But I think this is more to illustrate just the shift that's happening culturally.
Oh,
between
sure,
the two.
sure.
And I loved like as soon as he started, I loved how this same scene played out, because as soon as Chevy Chase started going toe to toe with Milton Berle, and I'm just like,
Don't do it.
I was like, man, like, look, I know Chevy Chase is very quick-witted and very mean with his comebacks, and I'm like, but Milton Berle is going to make you his bitch.
It's like going up
Milton,
against Don Rickles.
Don Rickles.
Milton Berle invented the Friars roast.
Yeah.
Like, you really think you're going to win against
That-
Milton Berle, even if he's over the hill?
When
Like,
he
you're
hits
not
him,
going
he
to
hits him
win.
with a line.
What is it? He's like, oh, the back of your mom's teeth.
Oh
Or
my God!
something.
If you
He's
want
like,
to,
if you want to come back,
If you're waiting for if you're
comeback.
looking for my comeback, it's on the back of your mom's teeth.
I cackled so hard.
Yeah.
Because even Chevy's fiance laughs, and she goes,
Yeah.
"Oh, you laughed at that?" And I was
Yeah.
like, "Got him."
Yeah.
Like that's
And
how you
that,
know.
that I thought was interesting too. You might have noticed this because I know you said you went back and watched the first episode.
Yeah.
But I remember that first commercial thing that they did where it was just like replacing dad or
The
first
replacement
episode.
dad.
New
And-
dad.
Yeah, and they were like, oh wow, Jackie's made her way into like the first sketch. Like
There she is.
and she was in that. I was
Yeah.
like, holy shit, that is her.
And
Yeah.
she pops up in sketches, I think, through season 3, even though Chevy's gone. She's still
Oh,
popping
interesting.
Up in sketches. Yeah.
That comeback joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, you're not going to be like,
No,
he's
no.
got so many of these things cocked and loaded, no pun intended, that like you will never beat him.
No.
Like you just won't. Like, and yeah. And I mean, it would probably also blew his mind because Milton Berle worked clean.
Oh, sure,
yeah,
sure,
Uncle
sure.
Milty.
He
yeah.
was very clean from a public persona
The
standpoint.
Bob Saget flip.
Yeah, but at the roast, he was just
Who
filthy.
is this
That was
guy?
the whole reason for the roast, right? They weren't allowed to work dirty, and so they wanted an area where they could just say the
Just go.
worst stuff imaginable.
Just turn it loose.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know,
very blue.
Milton Berle is very famous for the size of his penis.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
like, yeah, that is
Yeah.
a very,
like a-
very famous thing.
It's like a baby holding an apple.
Yeah,
I have a feeling I'm gonna have to explain this to my girlfriend tonight, who's
Yeah.
28 years old, and probably just be like, "Who? What?" It's
Yeah.
like you'll.
He's in a Muppet
We'll talk
movie.
about it later.
He's in a
Don't-
Muppet
don't
movie
look
for
it up.
crying out loud.
But he like there's a famous story where I think it was Phil Silvers was standing next to him at a urinal, and he was like,
Oh, I've
and he-
heard this.
and he's like, you better feed that thing or it's liable to turn on you. And then there's another time where I think it's him and Forrest Tucker, who if you know Forrest Tucker of anything, it's probably from F Troop.
Okay.
He was the big burly
Oh, yeah, yeah,
guy
yeah.
from F Troop, him and Sergeant Acorn, and they were having a argument in the locker room about whose penis was bigger, because he was I guess was famous for having a large penis as well, apparently, and someone in the locker room says to Milton Berle, like, don't make him feel bad, just pull out just enough to beat him.
Jesus.
That's so so good. That's such a great line.
Yeah,
That's
I was
so
like,
funny.
oh, it's good stuff. And one more thing, when you mentioned the Muppets, it got me thinking. Do you think this moment in time was an inspiration for the Muppet Show? Because
there's no way it couldn't be.
What is Kermit if not Lorne Michaels in this moment?
100%.
I never thought about
running
that.
around in a panic, trying to keep the show on the air.
Yep.
Everybody, all these crazy people working against him, but somehow they still pull it together and get that show on the air.
I'm totally piecing this together in my head, and I'm like seeing Monster as Belushi.
Yeah.
And like,
Uh-huh.
what?
Yeah, like
Fozzie
I was watching.
Fozzie is Aykroyd.
I spent the
Yeah.
whole time like
What?
like Belushi's animal.
Yep.
Yeah, like
Yep.
it like just like starting to be like, oh my god, this is the Muppet Show.
Yeah, it is very. If you go, I thought that as I was watching it. Also, I had when he's trying to like get it, but the Muppet Show is very much SNL.
Yeah.
just trying to keep it going.
Yeah.
Trying to keep it on.
Wow.
They got a celebrity guest host every week.
Every week.
Like yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a great call.
yeah. So
Because
Go
in the
back and-
70s, when did the Muppet Show like debut?
I
Was
think
that-
like 77.
Yeah,
Six
because
or something, a couple of
Mark
years.
Hamill's on there.
Oh yeah,
As like post Star Wars.
Yeah.
So
and like I know there's like Debbie Harry, Alice Cooper, all those.
76.
I think Christopher Stallone is
So-
on there.
Oh,
Christopher
wow.
Reeve, I
It
think,
starts
is on
in
there.
76, so it literally would
is
have
a
been like
year
the
at
next
later.
thing he did.
Yeah.
Probably was the Muppet Show.
And was that ABC?
It's so I thought it was in syndication. Like it says, he produced 2 pilot episodes for ABC in 74 and 75. Neither went forward, and then it premiered in the UK, and then and was ran in first run syndication in the States. So
I feel like I don't remember what channel. I do remember watching that though. I remember what channel it was on.
yeah, because it was like locally it aired on. I remember it on Channel 4, which
yeah,
is a CBS.
CBS.
affiliate.
Yeah, okay.
And it aired like at like 6:30 at night.
Yeah.
is when
Yes.
I remember it.
Yeah,
Airing,
yeah. You're
Because
totally
it was
right.
like for kids, but adults would still watch it.
Because it was also it was kind of like Shrek, where they would do adult humor,
yeah.
but
There'd
get
be some nods to things.
Kermit and Piggy were on there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, this is fantastic. Go watch
This is
it.
great.
This is so
Totally
good.
worth seeing.
Absolutely. If you love SNL, even if you don't love SNL, this is a love letter to that show and to Lorne Michaels, but it's also the chaotic nature of trying to get that first show off the ground is bonkers.
And just that cast in general, just kind of their
Chemistry. And,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but anyway, this was an absolute blast.
It
So
was.
I guess let's go around the table and everyone can say where to find them.
This is Joe. You can follow me on the Twitter at JoeyButts, BUTTS21.
And this is Orlandez. You can find me on Instagram at Orlandez or on 88.1 KDHX on Friday nights. Yeah, from 7 until 9.
Yeah, nice. And this is Tom. You can find me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Swan visits his daughter the day after the show.
Get ready for a spoiler